Temüjin, a 9-year-old boy, is in the process of selecting his future wife. His father had previously advised him to choose a bride who is fair and plump, with a face wider than a lake and small eyes that can gather wealth. Most importantly, he emphasized that the bride's legs must be strong and sturdy, because only a woman with powerful legs can bring double happiness to her husband. Soon, Temüjin becomes infatuated with a girl and shares his chosen bride with his father. However, his father is disappointed as he had intended for Temüjin to marry a girl from the rival Merkit tribe in order to reconcile years of animosity. Unexpectedly, Temüjin falls in love with a girl from the smallest tribe. Now their situation becomes precarious, but Temüjin remains immersed in the joy of finding a wife. Before leaving, he presents the girl with a crow bone ornament as a token of their bond, promising to return and marry her in 5 years. However, no one could have foreseen that this initially unfavorable alliance would shape Temüjin's grand future plans. On their way back, they encounter a thunderstorm, and everyone seeks shelter in a cave. According to Mongolian beliefs, thunder is a sign of the wrath of the gods. After the storm subsides, they continue their journey, but encounter a hostile tribe along the way. As per the rules of the grassland, no bloodshed should occur where there is water. Both sides stare at each other, cautious not to make any sudden moves. At that moment, representatives from the opposing tribe offer a bowl of milk as a gesture of goodwill. Temüjin's father prepares a cup of wine and a plate of dried meat as a reciprocal gesture. Seeing the hostile gazes from the other side, his companions suggest having a slave taste the milk first in case it is poisoned, but his father refuses. With a determined look in his eyes, Temüjin's father drinks the milk in one gulp, demonstrating the Mongolian spirit. However, his father underestimated the treachery of the other tribe. They hadn't traveled far when his father fell from his horse and succumbed to the poison. Altan, witnessing this, feels not sorrow but joy. Ironwood, despite being only 9 years old, retaliates with a powerful whip strike, unable to contain his assertiveness. With his father's demise, Altan leads a rebellion and quickly seizes control. He ravages the tribe, while Temüjin's mother attempts to intervene, but fails to intimidate his father's followers. She warns Altan that her son is the future Khan and that he will seek revenge. Fortunately, there was a grassland rule that forbade the killing of children who hadn't reached the height of a cartwheel. This rule ensured the continuation of the family line, preventing extinction. Consequently, Temüjin narrowly escaped the execution. However, Altan had no intentions of letting him go. He vowed to return in a few months and kill Temüjin. In order to survive, Temüjin had no choice but to seek refuge in the sacred mountain before the onset of winter and appeal to the heavenly gods for help. Perhaps the gods heard his prayers, as when Temüjin collapsed in the snowy ground, on the brink of freezing to death, a boy saved him. The two young children instantly bonded, engaged in deep conversation, and swore a blood oath to become blood brothers. Both harbored desires to conquer the grassland. Little did Temüjin know that the boy before him, Jamuka, would become his greatest rival during his future quest to unify Mongolia. Before long, Altan's men discovered Temüjin's hiding place during their patrols and brought him back to the tribe. Due to prolonged malnutrition, Temüjin still hadn't reached the height of a cartwheel. Enraged, Altan ordered the elders to feed Temüjin with plenty of fish and meat, vowing that when he returned, Temüjin would meet the criteria for execution. Temüjin calmly observed Altan, but deep inside he buried the seeds of revenge. When they left, heavy rain suddenly poured from the sky. The guards took shelter in their tents, providing Temüjin an opportunity to escape. With his shackles, he fled, relentlessly making his way to the sacred mountain. He devoutly knelt and prayed, hoping the heavenly gods would grant him freedom. As soon as he finished speaking, a snow wolf appeared on the altar. Its piercing gaze seemed to see through everything. Temüjin felt no fear. He had gained the approval of the gods and his shackles fell away. Many years later, Temüjin grew into an adult, but Altan never abandoned his pursuit of him. Yet Temüjin always managed to turn the tables and escape danger. Altan's cruel rule left the entire tribe in misery. Temüjin made a solemn vow to reclaim what rightfully belonged to him, but first he had to fulfill the 5-year agreement with Berta. Berta didn't despise the destitute Temüjin. Instead, she joyfully married him. Although Temüjin now possessed the aura of a king, he still felt somewhat shy in the face of their deep affection. The two of them traversed the grasslands and returned to Temüjin's mother's Mongolian yurt. His mother adorned Berta with the ancestral necklace, and Berta presented her own dowry, a precious fur coat. In this way, they truly became married. However, just as they were about to enter the bridal chamber, the chieftain of the Merkit tribe, accompanied by his men, arrived. They sought to claim Berta as their own because Temüjin's mother had been taken from the Merkit tribe long ago, and now the Merkit tribe wanted to take revenge by taking Temüjin's wife. During their escape, Temüjin was unfortunate to be struck by an arrow. To protect her husband, Berta decided to sacrifice herself. She forcefully slapped the horse's back, urging it to carry her husband home, while she was forcibly taken away by the Merkit tribe's men and became the wife of their chieftain. In order to rescue his newlywed wife, Temüjin sought out his blood brother, Jamuka. He presented Berta's dowry to Jamuka because it was the only valuable item he had, hoping that his dear brother would help him save his wife. However, there was a rule on the grasslands that Mongolians don't fight for women. It was a custom. Yet Temüjin's mind was made up. After pleading repeatedly, Jamuka agreed to his request, but they would have to wait until the following spring to launch their attack. Jamuka had just become a leader, and not many were willing to fight alongside him. Although Temüjin was anxious, he had no choice but to wait. Soon, several months passed, and the two brothers led a large number of soldiers and horses toward the Merkit tribe. The rocky hills were eerily silent, and the battle-hardened Jamuka sensed the impending danger. As expected, over 100 Merkit warriors were hiding among the rocks and launched a sudden attack on them. The skull-faced Merkit warriors were fierce and skilled in combat, but Jamuka's men were no pushovers either. The two sides fought fiercely. At a critical moment, Jamuka wielded his curved blade relentlessly, felling enemy after enemy as if they were mere vegetables being sliced. Taking advantage of the situation, Temüjin sneaked into the Merkit tribe's camp and quickly found his abducted wife. But Berta was now pregnant with their child, yet Temüjin didn't resent her. Instead, he held her tightly in his arms and proudly showed her to a hurriedly arriving Jamuka, saying, "This is my son." At the evening celebration, Jamuka wanted Temüjin to stay and be his second in command, but Temüjin had his own plans and politely declined. Afterwards, the two of them divided the spoils they had obtained, with Jamuka taking the majority and leaving the rest for Temüjin. Among the spoils, their subordinates selected the finest sword and presented it to Temüjin, asking him what he wanted to do with the remaining items. Temüjin not only distributed all the spoils to the soldiers who had fought alongside him, but also allocated a portion to the families of the fallen warriors. He didn't keep the sword for himself either. Instead, he immediately gave it to his most capable comrade, winning the hearts of many. This act was one of the reasons why Temüjin could sweep through the Mongolian grasslands and become unbeatable. However, as they say, two tigers cannot share the same mountain. The next morning, Jamuka discovered that Temüjin had left without saying goodbye, and he had even taken his two most trusted subordinates with him. They believed that Temüjin was the true ruler of the grasslands. Jamuka, filled with anger, mounted his horse and chased after them. He quickly caught up with the group and confronted Temüjin, questioning why he had left without a word and taken his subordinates. Faced with his brother's inquiry, Temüjin felt justified and had no intention of returning the subordinates. This action sparked strong dissatisfaction from Jamuka's younger brother, who drew his knife in protest. Fortunately, Jamuka intervened in time, restraining his brother's anger. Despite the lingering resentment, he let them go. It was this incident that created a rift between the former brothers. Months passed in the blink of an eye, and Jamuka's younger brother, seeking revenge against Temüjin, sneaked into their camp to steal their war horses but was shot dead by one of Temüjin's men. Realizing the trouble his subordinate had caused, he kneeled before Temüjin, pleading to give up his own head to Jamuka in exchange for peace between the tribes. Temüjin was in a dilemma, unsure of what to do. It was then that his wife told him that he had given his all for their people. If he handed over his subordinate, how would their people perceive him? Those simple words instantly awakened Temüjin. On the other side, upon learning of his brother's death, Altan quickly found Jamuka and whispered in his ear, fueling the flames of betrayal. Already discontented with the previous events, Jamuka was now driven by revenge for his brother's death. Soon the two of them formed an alliance and declared war against Temüjin. In a life-or-death situation, Temüjin ordered the elderly, weak, and women and children to leave first. As they bid farewell, Temüjin's wife presented him with their token of affection, praying for his safe return. Facing an enemy force 20 times their size, they stood resolute, with no one choosing to retreat. As Jamuka gave the command, a fierce battle ensued. The enemy surged like a tidal wave, but they refused to back down. They fought desperately, witnessing their brothers fall one by one. Temüjin's blood boiled with determination. Yet 4 hands are stronger than 2 fists, and soon Temüjin found himself alone on the battlefield. It was the only defeat he experienced in his lifetime. Perhaps out of their past brotherhood, Jamuka didn't directly kill him, but instead sold Temüjin as a slave to a merchant. They eventually ended up in the Western Jia dynasty. As they passed by a border official, he immediately noticed the extraordinary Temüjin.
买奴隶吧，都是草原拿来的。多少钱？这个吗？是5吊子。
A nearby Buddhist monk advised against buying him, saying that he was not an ordinary person.
不要卖它，不要招来灾祸。一个奴隶能招来什么灾祸？我们有几百个奴隶呢。你说什么，老家伙？
However, the border official paid no heed and purchased Temüjin for a mere 5 coins. But he didn't plan to kill Temüjin. Instead, he locked him in a dog cage and slowly tortured him. He couldn't have imagined that his momentary impulse would lead to the downfall of the entire dynasty, and he certainly couldn't have anticipated that this slave would nearly unify the world in the future. In this place, Temüjin was treated like an animal, mocked by the nobles, exposed to the elements day and night, barely fed, and even the dogs ate better than him. But Temüjin remained unmoved, his narrow eyes observing the world around him. All of this was noticed by a high monk who begged for Temüjin's forgiveness. I have come to plead with you. In the future, when you invade, please spare our temples. The high monk seemed to have insight into fate. Temüjin didn't respond directly but took out a token and asked the monk to deliver it to his wife. To protect the temple, the high monk embarked on a lonely journey across the desolate deserts and endless sand dunes. Ultimately, unable to withstand the scorching sun, he died along the way. 10 kilometers away, Burde, sensing something, brought their child to search for her husband. Along the way, she discovered the token in the high monk's hand and instantly realized her husband was still alive. She intercepted a caravan, offering her body as exchange, and pleaded with the leader to take her to Western Xia. After many years, Berta finally reunited with her husband. At this point, Temüjin was emaciated from prolonged hunger, his skin weathered by wind and sun, like numb bark on a tree. Berta held back her tears. That night, using all her silver coins, she bribed the guards and successfully rescued the man she had risked her life to be with. Looking at the daughter who suddenly appeared, Temüjin understood the hardships his wife had endured and gladly accepted the child. Back in their homeland, they envisioned a better life for the future. But the land had already changed. The vast grasslands transformed into a hellish realm by the Mongolian people's calamities. Temüjin returned to the sacred mountain to offer prayers, seeking the heavens' bestowal of strength. The snow wolf he encountered over a decade ago reappeared, and under its gaze, Temüjin made a vow to unite the grasslands. In a few short years, he accomplished it. Countless heroes came to join him, and a formidable army of 10,000 men quickly formed. By this time, he had become Jamuka's greatest threat. Although Jamuka's forces at the Zamu River were numerous, more than twice his own, Temüjin showed no signs of fear. He firmly believed that under the protection of the heavens, his troops would be invincible. They swiftly turned their horses around, and the pursuing enemy, desperate to salvage their pride, gave chase, unknowingly falling into Temüjin's trap. At Temüjin's command, the hidden archers emerged, and a dense rain of arrows blanketed the battlefield. In less than 15 minutes, the vanguard force was completely annihilated. Fueled by Jamuka's fury, the entire army launched a full-scale assault, like a vast, unstoppable black wave. Suddenly, 2 dark clouds converged slowly. Temüjin knew that the heavens had arrived. With the sound of the charge, the dark clouds thickened, lightning flashed, and the Mongolians, fearing thunder and believing it to be the wrath of the heavens, Jamuka's massive army quickly fell into chaos. Only Temüjin stood tall on the grassland, like a god. With a swing of his long sword, the warriors saw their divine protector. They no longer feared the lightning, raising their swords to kill the enemy. In the end, they emerged victorious in this battle that determined their foothold. Temüjin became the true ruler of the grasslands. According to the customs of the grasslands, all slaves and captives should be executed to prove the Mongolians' military achievements. But Temüjin did not do so. Instead, he incorporated all the captives into his own army. His unconventional governance and orderly new regulations were the crucial factors that brought him to his present position. Back in his camp, Temüjin looked at his former comrades, feeling a mix of emotions. He had never truly regarded Jamuka as an enemy. In the end, Temüjin let him go because he had greater ideals awaiting him. In 1206, at the age of 44, Temüjin unified the Mongolian grasslands and subsequently led his forces to conquer the Western Xia. However, he kept his promise and preserved the temples of the high monks. Moving forward, with a massive army of 300,000 troops, he conquered East and West, annihilating over 40 countries and subjugating more than 720 ethnic groups. His empire spanned over 45 million square kilometers, with a population exceeding 600 million, creating the most vast empire in human history. This is the life of the legendary Genghis Khan, Temüjin. The end. Subscribe if you enjoyed. See you in our next video.